I need you to understand something before I tell you what he said. I need you to understand that by the time he said it, I had already been absorbing smaller versions of it for years. The sentence that ended my marriage was not unusual in its content. It was unusual in its clarity, in how fully it named what had been living between us for so long that I had stopped seeing it. My name is Zara. I am 41 years old. I had been married to Conrad for 9 years, and in those 9 years I had become, incrementally and without noticing the process, a woman who was grateful for ordinary things. Grateful when he came to a dinner I had prepared. Grateful when he acknowledged something I had done. Grateful when he chose, on any given evening, to be present rather than not. Gratitude is a beautiful thing in the right context. It is a poison when it becomes the baseline of how you receive the person who is supposed to love you. It was a Thursday evening in October. I had prepared dinner, the kind of dinner that took 2 hours, because I had learned early in the marriage that care expressed through food was something Conrad received better than care expressed in other forms. He arrived home at 8:15. The food had been warm at 7. By 8:15 it was not warm, and I had been sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of water, waiting, not texting him, because texting him when he was late felt like complaint, and complaint was something I had trained myself out of. He walked through the door. He did not say sorry. He looked at the table, at the food, at me, and he said, "You should be grateful I even come home to you every night." He said it the way you say something you have always thought and have finally decided to stop managing. Not in anger. Casually. The way you say the sky is blue or traffic was bad. I looked at my husband. I did not respond. I picked up my water glass. I went to the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed for 14 minutes, I know because I watched the clock, and I made the only decision that has ever felt completely clean inside me. I got up. I opened the closet. I began to pack. Packing one bag is a specific discipline. It requires you to decide, in real time, what you actually need versus what you have been keeping, because it belonged to a life you were still maintaining. I chose practical things first. My laptop. My passport. The external drive with my professional portfolio. 3 changes of clothes, not my best clothes, not the ones I had bought for his events and his dinners, but the ones that were mine in the specific sense of fitting the woman I was when nobody was watching. My grandmother's ring, which I kept in a small velvet pouch in the back of my jewelry drawer, and which I had never worn because something had always told me it deserved a different version of my life than the one I was living. 9 years in one bag. Not because 9 years can actually fit in one bag, but because the things worth keeping from 9 years turned out to be fewer than I would have predicted. I want to tell you about Conrad, because I think you deserve the full picture. Conrad Elias Marsh was 44 years old, a corporate attorney with a reputation for precision that served him excellently in professional contexts and very poorly in personal ones. He was handsome in the specific way of men who have always been told so and have organized a significant portion of their identity around it. He was not violent. I want to be clear about that because I know that when women leave, people look for the dramatic reason, the obvious reason, the reason that sounds sufficient. The reason was the sentence. The reason was also the 9 years of smaller sentences before it, the sigh when I spoke too long at a dinner party, the correction of my pronunciation of a word in front of his colleagues, the way he described my career as Zara's little project, to his friends. All delivered with the same casual certainty as Thursday's sentence. All communicating the same thing: I am doing you a favor by being here. I had believed that for a long time. I had made it my normal. I had cooked 2-hour dinners and sat with growing cold food and called that love. Thursday was the last Thursday of that life. I zipped the bag. Are you enjoying the story so far? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, because trust me, there's a lot more story to be told. Without wasting much time, let's continue. I called my sister first. Not because she was the closest in distance, but because she was the person who would not ask me if I was sure. Josephina Diz Okonkwo, she had married and kept her own name, which I had noted even at her wedding with a quality of admiration I didn't fully understand until Thursday, was 38 years old, 3 years younger than me. A pediatrician who had the specific energy of a woman who spent her days making difficult things clearer for frightened people. She lived 40 minutes away. She had said to me, at my wedding 9 years earlier, standing beside me in the bridal suite while I adjusted my veil, "You know you can always come to me. For anything. No questions." I had said of course and laughed and not understood that she was giving me something specific. She picked up on the first ring. "Joe," I said. I left. 1 second of silence. "I'll have the guest room ready in an hour," she said. "Are you safe?" "Yes," I said. "Do you need me to come to you?" "No," I said. "I'm driving." "I'll be up," she said. "Drive carefully." That was the whole conversation. She asked no questions. She expressed no surprise. She did not say "I knew it" or "I told you so" or "Are you sure?" She simply received the information and organized herself around it, the way she organized herself around every crisis, with the immediate practical warmth of someone whose primary instinct is toward the person in front of her rather than the drama of the situation. I drove to her house with my one bag in the back seat. Conrad texted at 9:47, "Where are you?" I did not respond. He texted again at 10:15, "Zara, this is dramatic." I did not respond. He called at 10:52. I let it ring. Not from cruelty. From the specific clarity of a woman who has just chosen herself for the first time in 9 years and is being careful not to let a phone call undo it before it has fully set. I arrived at Josephine's at 10:28. She opened the door before I knocked. She had made tea. She had made the guest bed with the blue sheets I preferred. She had left a towel on the foot of the bed and said nothing except, "The bathroom is yours. Sleep when you're ready." She let me sleep for 11 hours. I know this because when I woke it was nearly noon on Friday and the house smelled like the specific coffee she bought from the Ghanaian market 3 blocks away, which she made only when she considered the morning important. She was in the kitchen when I came downstairs. She handed me a mug without speaking. We sat at her kitchen table, she across from me, her reading glasses pushed to the top of her head, a patient expression that I recognized from when we were children, and she was waiting for me to say the thing I was working my way toward. "He's been calling," I said. "I know," she said. "Your phone made sounds throughout the night." I didn't answer. "No," she said. "Good." A pause. "Joe," I said. "Did you know? How bad it was?" She looked at her coffee for a moment. "I knew something," she said carefully. "I didn't know the shape of it. I knew that when you talked about him you spent a lot of energy making him sound better than the stories you were telling." That sentence landed in me the way accurate sentences do, not like a blow but like a key. "I did that," I said. "You're very good at it," she said. "You always were. You could describe a terrible thing in a way that made the terrible part invisible." I thought about Conrad's colleagues' dinners. The pronunciation correction. The little project. The years of smaller sentences I had translated, in the retelling, into personality quirks, into the difficulties of successful men, into the specific language of a woman who has decided her marriage is worth defending to anyone who might otherwise see it clearly. "He said I should be grateful he comes home," I said. Josephine looked at me. "He said that Thursday, before I left." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that I want to write down exactly, because it is the sentence I have returned to most in the months since. "A man who thinks coming home is a gift he is giving you has never understood what home is supposed to mean." I held my coffee. "I think I need an attorney," I said. "I already have a name," she said. "I've had it for 2 years." Her name was Odessa Whitfield, 50 years old, with 30 years of family law and the specific bearing of a woman who had made the decision decades ago that her job was to make sure her clients left with what they were owed and nothing less. Josephine had found her 2 years earlier through a colleague whose divorce had been, as Josephine put it, handled with the precision of a surgical procedure. I called Odessa on Friday afternoon from Josephine's living room. She listened to me for 35 minutes. I told her about the 9 years. The assets we had built together. I had been a brand strategist with my own clients before the marriage and had, gradually, shifted towards supporting Conrad's career in ways that reduced my own income and professional development. The house, purchased in both names, but with a down payment sourced largely from my premarital savings. The investment account we had funded jointly. The years of professional compromise I had made in service of his trajectory. When I finished, she said, "Tell me about your career before the marriage." I told her. She wrote things down. "The shift in your professional focus during the marriage," she said. "Do you have documentation? Contracts, client histories, income records from before versus during?" "Yes," I said. "I keep everything." "Good," she said. In this state, professional sacrifice made in service of a spouse's career is a calculable factor in marital asset division. She paused. "The house down payment, can you establish the source funds?" "Bank records from my personal account," I said. "Premarital savings." "Perfect," she said. "I'd like to meet in person Monday." "There's one more thing," I said. "Go ahead." "He doesn't know I have an attorney," I said. I think he thinks I'll come back." "Of course he does," Odessa said, with the specific dryness of a woman who has heard this before, recently, and the time before that. Men who say what he said to you are usually quite surprised when the consequence turns out to be permanent. "How long?" I said. "For what you're describing," she said. 6 to 8 months if uncontested." "He may contest." "He'll contest," I said. "He's an attorney." "So am I," she said. Conrad stopped texting by Saturday morning. I noted the silence with the specific attention of a woman who has been trained to read him. His silence was not the silence of a man who was giving her space. It was the silence of a man recalibrating. He sent flowers to Josephine's address on Sunday. I want to sit with that for a moment. He sent flowers to Josephine's address, which meant he had called around and found where I was, which meant the Thursday evening sentence had not diminished his confidence sufficiently for him to consider that I might actually have left. He sent flowers because flowers were his version of apology, beautiful, public, requiring nothing from him except a phone call to a florist. The card said, "I spoke thoughtlessly. Please come home." Not, "I was wrong." Not, "I understand why you left." Not, "I have been thinking about what I said and what it revealed." I spoke thoughtlessly, which is the phrasing of a man who believes the problem was the speaking rather than the thought. Josephine put the flowers in her kitchen. They were beautiful flowers. She was not going to waste them. She showed me the card. I read it twice. I set it down. "No," I said. "No," she agreed. Odessa called that Monday morning with the initial filing paperwork ready. I drove to her office in the car Josephine had lent me. The office smelled like good coffee and serious carpet, the specific atmosphere of rooms where consequential things are done correctly. Odessa shook my hand with both of hers, a deliberate, warm, professional gesture. She was compact and upright, with close-cropped silver locks and the reading glasses that appeared when she was reading and disappeared when she was listening. "Before we begin," she said, "I want to tell you something I tell all my clients." "Go ahead," I said. "The moment the papers are served," she said, "you will likely feel the specific panic of someone who has made an irreversible decision. That feeling is normal. It is not information." The information was what he said on Thursday. I looked at her. "Yes," I said. "It was." She opened the folder. Conrad was served on a Wednesday morning at his office. I know this because Odessa told me, and I know the specific detail of it being at his office rather than the house, because Odessa had chosen that location deliberately. "Men like this," she said, "manage their image at work very carefully. Being served at his office will be the most clarifying experience he has had in a long time." He called my cell at 11:43. I was at Josephine's kitchen table with coffee and a contract I was reviewing for a new brand strategy client, the first one I had taken in 8 months. A decision I had made the week before because returning to my own work was the most concrete act of self-reclamation available to me. I did not answer. He called 3 more times between 11:43 and 2 p.m. Then he called Josephine's cell. Josephine let it ring. At 3:15, his attorney contacted Odessa. He was contesting. "Expected," Odessa said when she called me. "He's going to argue the professional sacrifice claim is overstated and that your premarital savings contribution to the down payment was a gift rather than a traceable individual asset." "Can he make that argument?" I said. "He can make it," she said. "He won't win it. I have 30 years of winning it. But it means 6 to 8 months becomes 8 to 12. "Fine," I said. "You're not scared," she said. I thought about it honestly. I was scared for 9 years, I said. I was scared he would leave. I was scared he would withdraw. I was scared of the silence and the sighs and the corrections. I spent 9 years afraid of a man who thought coming home was a favor. I paused. I'm not scared anymore. I'm working. She was quiet for a moment. Good, she said. Keep working. I went back to the contract on the table. 8 months. That is how long it took, not the 12 Odessa had projected as the upper bound, because Conrad's attorney was good, but Odessa was, as she had stated, Odessa. The negotiation had 3 significant moments. The first was when Conrad's attorney argued the professional sacrifice claim by presenting data suggesting that my brand strategy career had been declining before the marriage and that the decline had continued independent of my marital decisions. Odessa produced 6 years of client contracts from before the marriage showing consistent growth, and the 3 years of redirected focus during the marriage specifically aligned to events in Conrad's career, his partnership bid, his firm's expansion. The 2 years he had needed her to be the consistent domestic presence that freed him for 60-hour weeks. Conrad's attorney asked for a recess. The second significant moment was the house. Conrad argued that the down payment, while sourced from my premarital savings, had been contributed as a joint investment rather than a traceable individual asset. Odessa produced the original wire transfer records, the account history showing the source funds, and a personal loan agreement I had drafted with myself, a document Odessa found extraordinary when I produced it, in which I had, at the time of the purchase, noted the down payment source for my own records because I was, as I had always been, a woman who kept everything. Conrad looked at that document across the negotiation table for a long time. The third significant moment was Conrad himself. He had requested to speak directly during one of the later sessions. His attorney had advised against it, visibly, and he had looked at me and said, "I don't understand why you can't just talk to me." I had looked at my husband of 9 years. "Conrad," I said, "I waited at the table for an hour and 15 minutes on Thursday. Then you told me I should be grateful you came home." There was nothing to talk about after that. His attorney put a hand on his arm. The settlement that resulted was not everything I wanted. It was everything I was owed. Something happens when you leave a marriage that people thought was solid. People appear. Not all of them helpfully. 3 of Conrad's colleagues' wives called me within the first month. 2 of them said some version of, "I'm sure you two can work it out." One of them, a woman named Dorinda, whose husband had been in Conrad's practice group for 12 years, called me on a Tuesday morning and said, "I just want you to know that what you did took courage. I hope you're all right." I told her I was. "He talked about you," she said. "At their dinners." Not unkindly exactly, but in a way that she paused. In a way that made me uncomfortable, and I never said anything, and I've been thinking about that since I heard you left. "What did he say?" I said. "He called you capable," she said. But the way he said it made it sound like a surprise. Like he was constantly surprised that you could do things. I sat with that for a moment. "Thank you for calling," I said. My former clients, the ones I had let go during the marriage years, 3 of them reached out within the first 4 months of my return to active work. Word had traveled through the specific professional grapevine of people who follow careers they respect that I was working again. The brand strategy work came back faster than I expected and with a quality of client I had not seen before the marriage, which told me that the years of stepping back had not erased my reputation, but had allowed it to become something people noticed when it returned. Josephine and I had dinner every Sunday. Not every Sunday, that makes it sound more planned than it was. We just kept finding ourselves at her kitchen table on Sunday evenings with food she had made and conversation that had no agenda, and at some point we acknowledged that this was a thing we were doing and that it was good. "You seem different," she said one Sunday. "Different how?" I said. "Lighter," she said. "Like you put something down." "I put something down," I said. "Here is what I kept from 9 years of marriage, stated plainly because I think plain is the right register for this ending. The settlement gave me my half of the house value, which I chose to take in cash rather than residence, because the house had been, in the end, a house where I had waited at the table for people who were late and called it love. My traceable down payment contribution was returned with interest. My share of the investment account. A financial settlement for the professional years I had redirected, not everything those years might have been worth, but an honest accounting of the calculable portion. I took a studio apartment 2 weeks after the settlement closed. Small, with a window that faced east, which meant the morning light came directly into the main room and was the first thing I saw from the bed. I had not had a room with morning light in 9 years because the house faced west and Conrad had preferred the primary bedroom for its evening view. I filled the studio with the things I had packed in the one bag, plus the things I bought slowly and specifically over the following months, each purchase a small declaration that this space was mine to choose. My grandmother's ring went on my right hand. Not as a statement. As the correct use of a thing that had been waiting. The brand strategy practice grew. By the end of the first year, I had 6 active clients and a waiting list of 2, which is the kind of problem I had never had before the marriage and which told me something about what the marriage had cost. Conrad remarried 18 months after the divorce. I heard this through Dorinda, who had become, in the specific way of people who choose honesty over comfort, a friend. I received this information with the specific blankness of someone for whom it is no longer relevant. I am 41 years old. I packed one bag on a Thursday evening in October. I drove to my sister's house with my grandmother's ring in a velvet pouch and a laptop with a professional portfolio and 3 changes of the clothes I wore when nobody was watching. And I never looked back. Not because looking back is weakness. Because there was nothing behind me worth the turning. Moral: a person who treats their presence in your life as a gift they are giving you has never understood that love is not charity. Leave before you forget what it feels like to be somebody's priority rather than somebody's favor. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you for watching. I hope it stayed with you and gave you something to think about. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe and be part of the journey. There's so much more story still to come.